Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first ever GRC Data and AI Summit. We're very excited to have you all with us today. My name is Shimon Friedman, and I am the Director of Product Marketing at Anecdotes. Our goal for this summit is simple. We want you to leave with as much practical advice as possible so you can go back to your organizations and bring the data and AI revolution to your program. To do this, we have a jam-packed schedule for you with some amazing speakers. In addition to these sessions, we'll also be doing a few polls live throughout the summit to hear your thoughts and ideas, something I'm really looking forward to, and I'll explain a little more about just a bit later. And of course, we'll be announcing the winners of our Xbox giveaway. So there's a lot to look forward to, and I think it's time to get started. Just one last thing. If you have any questions throughout the summit, please don't hesitate to send them in the Q&A. Our team is here to answer and follow up. Right. It's time to begin, and for that, let me hand it over to Yair for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Shimon, and welcome everyone. My name is Yair Koznitzer, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Anecdotes. But before I was a GRC guy, I was a data guy. In fact, data is how I found my way into GRC in the first place. I could never understand why data was being withheld from enterprise GRC teams. It is the one thing that could make their lives easier. Yes, but more importantly, their work better. It felt like someone was purposely setting GRC up for failure. How can you have a real understanding of your risk posture if you're guesstimating the efficacy of your mitigating controls? How can you be expected to provide real value to the business if you're forced to rely on periodic audits? These are at the core of GRC, and the traditional way of doing it fails 100% of the time. Static evidence like PDFs and screenshots aren't enough to keep up with the modern speed of business. At best, they're accurate at the second they're created, and that's a generous assumption. But even if the screenshots were accurate, can you really use day, week, or month-old evidence? Can you really have confidence in your program if all you're checking is samples of your operations? Traditional GRC workflow automation created some efficiencies, but didn't solve the underlying problem of traditional way of doing GRC. Until teams have the data they need when they need it, they're just not going to be able to do their jobs properly. It is time for a real revolution in GRC. And data and AI are the drivers of that revolution. AI is only as smart as the data it is built on, which is why it is so critical to pair it with a strong foundation of data. Together, they form the new wave of technology that for the first time ever will allow GRC teams to do what they need when they need to. With a continuous flow of data and AI ingesting, contextualizing, and assessing that data at an enterprise scale, every aspect of the GRC process can finally be revolutionized. Using simple, natural language questions, you can do everything. From evidence collection and validation, through risk analysis, all the way to creating impactful database reports. If you can think of it, the powerful duo of data and AI can make it a reality. This is the technology that our community has been waiting for. Now, GRC can shift from ad hoc to strategic, from audit factory to real risk management, from rough estimations to impactful insights. We at Anecdotes are proud to lead this future of GRC, and we're very excited to have you all explore its immense potential during this summit. I want to take a quick moment and thank our amazing sponsors for helping us make this possible. I'm looking forward to hearing from all of our incredible speakers and from all of you. We're also very excited to give you a first look at some of our latest groundbreaking data and AI capabilities, which enterprises all over the world are already leveraging to join the revolution. So I think it's time I stop talking and give the stage to Jake, who will kick off our first session. Enjoy!
Thanks, Jair, and welcome everyone. I'm very excited to kick off today's first session. I'm more excited to be joined by Avni and Brian, who will introduce themselves in just a minute. But before that, I wanted to talk about what makes Formula One teams successful. Yes, you heard me right. Formula One teams. F1 teams don't win because they have the loudest engine or because they have the flashiest logo. They win because they treat data as a strategy. A modern day Formula One car produces 1.1 million data points per race. Every tyre slip, every brake temperature, every throttle trace, and every wind adjustment. But they don't spend all weekend collecting that data. That part's fully automated. It happens in the background. It happens instantaneously. They don't even know about it. They focus on applying that data. With the help of AI, they ask questions like, do we pit early and undercut the competition? Should we adjust aero balance before Q3? Is this setup going to fall apart by lap 20? Well, if this means nothing to you, well, that is a shame because Formula One is amazing. But I think you'll get where I'm going with this eventually. So let's now talk about how that applies to security. In GRC and most organizations, we still spend 60 to 70% of GRC effort just collecting and validating evidence, screenshots, spreadsheets, manual exports, questions and explanations. And when we do automate, it's usually not so successful. And it's mainly focused on making audits easier and not decisions smarter. It's almost as if evidence collection has become the goal instead of the starting line. Right now, our GRC pyramid looks like this, with a large block at the bottom of evidence collection and a small part at the top of kind of strategy or strategic decisions. We invest most of our time and money at the bottom on grunt work, but the real value where we can generate for the business, well, that's at the top where strategy, risk, and business alignment happens. Here's the truth though, an F1 team doesn't win by reacting. They win by learning faster, by adjusting sooner, and acting with a data-driven precision. If our GRC programs don't look like that, well, we're not going to win the race. We're just hoping to finish at that point. So it's time to flip the pyramid. And the way to do that is through data and AI. Or at least that's in my opinion, and hopefully it'll become yours too. And luckily we've got two excellent speakers who are going to share their thoughts with you as well today. Avni, before we dive in, let me ask you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me. Again, Avni Desai, I'm CEO of Schulman. Schulman is one of the largest providers of cybersecurity assessments, everything from SOC, ISO, PCI to FedRAMP. And we love being able to work with tools like Anecdotes. And so excited to talk about where I think GRC is going.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Brian, give us a little bit about yourself too, please.
Yes, hi. Thanks for having me. My name is Brian Lee. I lead the compliance operations function at Snowflake. One of my key roles within Snowflake is to work directly with engineers to ensure we continuously meet the compliance requirements through automation and data.
Perfect. So one on the audit side and one on the customer side. Let me ask the first question then. What do you think is the number one problem that holds back GRC teams today? And how can data and AI help solve that problem? I'll throw to you, Brian, first as the one doing the work before I come to Avni as the one who has to review it.
Yeah, definitely. This is a fast-moving kind of thing. One of the biggest problems is producing complete and accurate results when using data, especially if you want to prove compliance or come to a decision. It's right now it's very easy to go and with the accessibility to data to go and create necessary automation, to be able to answer questions, to give to auditors. But as soon as an auditor kind of asks, like, hey, prove to me that this data is right, the conversation starts to get a little bit more murky. We run into issues where the completeness and accuracy isn't really there. And so what you have to do is you have to end up resulting back to the old ways, which is going directly to the system, pulling screenshots, running reports, and then reconciling that to the automation that you've created or the AI that you've created.
I like that. I think that completeness and accuracy are always the two problems that we face most commonly. Is that also ringing true for Schulman? Is that an issue? And how does data and AI make that any easier for you as auditors?
100%. I agree with you. I would also say that's the number one blocker. I would say number two, I think it's hands down, is the perception problem. Like too often GRC is seen as something that belongs to the compliance team. Like it's their job to worry about risk controls, ethics, regulation. But honestly, like GRC is everyone's responsibility. Every team has risk. Every decision carries implications. And if GRC isn't embedded into the org, that's where you're going to get gaps, both in visibility and accountability. So I can tell you a quick story. We were working with this mid-sized tech company and they were going through a lot of growth. Great product, building fast, iterating constantly, but no one had looped in legal or security or privacy as the feature was rolled out. We've heard this story over and over again. Look, they weren't trying to be reckless, they were just moving fast. But the result, 18 months in, they accumulated a massive backlog of compliance issues, no clear owner. And let's say their first SOC 2 was, it was a humbling experience for them. So that's where I think AI and data comes in. It's not magic bullets, but it's an enabler. When you have the right data architecture and the AI tools, GRC can meet people where they are. Like, so imagine a system that can flag control ownership automatically, right? Nudges teams when evidence is missing, right? And it talks about trends when there's an incident before they get escalated. So, like, to me, it's not science fiction. It's here. And I think that's what it's going to help with. And I also think AI can help democratize GRC by making it understandable to non-experts. I think these risk models don't have to be buried in spreadsheets. I mean, you said it before, like it can be visual, it can be interactive. You can have these KPIs now that actually matter to your CFO or to your product lead. But it only works if we treat GRC as part of the business strategy and not this control checklist Word document. And I think that's where AI is powerful. It can't fix a culture that treats compliance as a one-time event, but I think it's part of the solution that takes part tech and part mind shift.
I absolutely love what you're saying, and I'm a massive advocate of this. I think there's too much of this nonsense around GRC not being technical, not being engineering. It's just kind of an afterthought. I think that in doing that, people kind of completely forgot that the R in GRC stands for risk. Risk is inherently what drives a business. Risk should dominate and dictate your entire information security strategy in terms of where you deploy your people, what they do, where you spend on tooling and services. In fact, everything should be dictated by risk. And therefore, GRC, for me, is front and center of how you build and scale a security program in your business. And your example is perfect, Avni, in terms of showing that when people think about engineering first and don't consider the fact that they're going to have to think about risk and compliance and building in a robust and scalable and secure way, well, then they completely miss the point of what's happening here. So I completely agree. And Brian, to your point, I think it's complex. So let me phrase it this way. If you had more available data, if you had better focused AI, what is the one thing your team could do right now that would be completely game changing for you?
We're actually starting to do some of this now, but there is definitely, we're seeing some efficiencies gained across the board, in terms of being able to make decisions, to be able to tailor our organization and find out where the biggest problem areas are, to then go drive in deeper and fix those problems. Before, you had to go run a particular audit and, go manually do stuff to gather what you need to do. Now you can kind of cover a larger scope faster. And I think that's been really, so that's how we look at it, in terms of being able to leverage that.
I love that because it's kind of like dynamic driven risk, right? It's the idea that you go and focus your time, resource, and people on things that actually matter. But you have to know what actually matters to do that. And then to be able to actually know what matters, you need data and real-time information to show you what matters, right? I think that's really interesting. We talked about a feature called Policy Guardian, right? Which is this concept that you can ingest a policy and map controls in an automated fashion to show that what you say in your policy, for example, that MFA and SSO is in place across all users, that it actually happens. And I think that must be one of the most interesting things in the space from an audit stance, because you must spend a lot of time reviewing documentation in your teams and then asking, how can you show this? If you can show it dynamically using data and using AI, that takes a huge amount of work and allows you to focus on really adding value.
No, I mean, I agree. If I had to think of like what, as a CEO, what I'm seeing is if you can start using data to connect GRC outcomes to real business value, I mean, that's so impactful. Like typically GRC programs focus on inputs. How many audits have you done? How long has your audits taken? How many risks were logged? How many controls are in place, right? But honestly, that doesn't move hearts or budgets, right? When what moves people is impact. And so when you can show tangible, like this audit finding and this incident report did this. So now instead of saying like we have 13 third-party risks, what you should say is one risk is costing us $1.2 million in churn annually. Like I think that kind of clarity really changes the conversation. And we're back to what you said is GRC is part of the strategic part of the business. And look, here's the kicker. You don't even need a massive AI program to start. Like even using simple models or existing tools to say, hey, these are our top reoccurring issues. Again, auto flag, right? Prioritize based on like financial exposure. That creates momentum. And so when, again, the business needs to see GRC can surface insights. And I say this all the time, surface insights, not just oversight. And I think that's when you're going to start leaning in. You get better data, more engagement, I hope better risk ownership. And that's when GRC becomes a partner and not like this police force that we're seeing. So, GRC leaders should also, I think, partner really close with their data teams. Like you're going to be surprised how many insights are sitting in logs, service tickets, HR reports, and there's this need to connect that to the risk narrative. And so I want to get us there, right? GRC as a mover of the business and actually taking some real dollars associated with it instead of just talking about controls.
I mean, that's a wonderful, idealistic view, right? Let me go to a customer. Brian, does this work? Are you now able to show the value of GRC by talking about the risk that you have and using this to talk about where you need to spend money and how that's going to help drive the business's objectives? Or is this just blue sky thinking right now?
Yes, absolutely. Avni said that's like exactly how we've been approaching it, and it's been working miraculously. We've actually gotten to expose like some of these areas where people were just like, oh, that's just the risk. It's not, I can't really quantify it. Now we have more data to actually use that to quantify and be able to escalate particular ones and saying, this is costing the business this much. We need to go in and focus our efforts on these particular risks and areas. And then that helps drive real results because then we actually look at the data after the fact, and now we can actually tangibly say what the cost avoidance that we had for a particular area because we remediated something. So 100% agree there.
Okay, perfect. Good to hear. I'm going to try and squeeze 2 more questions into this tight timeline. I want to try and give a bit of a shout out to the fact that we have dramatically changed since I started in GRC and security in general. We did spreadsheets and screenshots, and there was nothing else available. So I've seen the evolution. We've gone from that to a place of automation, data-driven, AI-driven GRC. So I think that's how GRC is better. Avni, Brian, how do you think GRC is better? Do you think it's better than it was 5 years ago?
Even if we looked 5 or 6 years ago, it felt like trying to fly a plane with like a paper map and some walkie-talkies. Like you're right. You had the risk register over here, your audit plans over here, a compliance checklist and a separate spreadsheet. All your policies were in some SharePoint drive that hadn't been updated probably since like the last reorg. Everything was disjointed. And honestly, it was very reactive. And I remember control owners, I spent 10 years at a Big Four doing audits. And I remember control owners would always say, wait, were we supposed to log that? Or I thought that was finance's issue. And there was this constant scramble to connect the dots between risk controls and outcomes. And all the time, GRC felt like it was after the problem happened. I now see that the shift is there. Like it feels more like, I know you talk Formula One, but I'm going to say mission control at NASA. Like it's all interconnected and it's data driven. And I've seen at our clients, they're not asking us anymore, did we pass the audit? They want to know, are we managing our risks real time? Are we resilient? Like that's the word of 2025 is resiliency. And if a vendor fails or if there's a breach, how quickly will we know and how fast can we recover, right? That's the mind shift change that we're seeing. We're going away from point in time to continuous monitoring, from checking the box to telling stories with data. And GRC was always thought of as a cost center. And now, again, it's moving to a strategic enabler, right? So honestly, this is so exciting for me, especially the last, I would say 2 to 3 years, because when you pair good governance with technology, you stop being just compliant, right? That's when you start becoming resilient. I'm going to tell you, that's my word for maybe even 2026. And I think that's going to be the powerful differentiator in today's market.
No, I love it. And Brian, I can see you nodding along. So I'm going to ask you a different question. I want people to take home practical things they can actually apply from this conversation. So since you think it has changed and got better, what is the one thing you'd recommend that people do to shift their focus from evidence and manual collection to more strategic real-time GRC? What's the one thing they should go and do?
I would say the one thing is get hands-on, get the tools necessary to make you successful. And there's so many tools out there right now, but obviously there's certain tools that will give you that effectiveness that you want. Whether it be tools that are aggregating data together. Snowflake, we use our own platform for aggregating data across all GRC tools. We partner that with Anecdotes and that data, bring it all together. You know, there's other ways to do that as well. There's AI. So I would say get your hands on the AI, get your hands on the data, figure out how you can access it, start, playing with it because, it's very fast moving. And if you don't start now, you're going to fall behind. And so I'd highly recommend that.
Love that getting hands-on and definitely agree with you 100%. Avni, any final thoughts you'd like to add?
I completely agree. I think we're in a really exciting moment, like with AI, a lot of evolving regulations, a lot of stakeholder expectations are increasing. Look, we're being asked to build organizations that are not just compliant, but trusted. And we're in a really great place between, the type of technology that Anecdotes has and companies like Snowflake who are embracing it and, auditors on top who are looking for more, not just being oversight. So look, we're building credibility faster, and I think we're navigating a lot of uncertainty with much more confidence than we've ever had.
Perfect. Look, I've given my thoughts on LinkedIn very vocally, so check me out and follow if you're interested. I believe that data and AI are the only solution to making GRC actually work in a future-proof and scalable way. Thank you very much for listening and for the time that you've given us. We're going to throw it now to a question to you. So Shimon, take it away.
Wow, thank you for that, Avri, Brian, and Jake. Really interesting stuff. And as Jake mentioned, it's time for our first poll. Here's how it will work. We're going to put up a multiple choice question on the screen. To place your vote, all you need to do is send the number of the answer you choose in the comments. So, we just heard how AI can help you turn GRC pyramid on its head and give you more time to focus on what matters. We want to know how you would choose to spend that time. Would you mature your control environment further, invest more time on risk activities, level up your reporting, or take a couple of more very well-deserved coffee breaks? So let's see where the votes are going. Give you a couple more seconds to place your vote. Looks right now like risk is winning with a close second behind it with maturing control environment. Not very surprising. We all know that risk is probably the most important thing when it comes to GRC, and it really should dictate everything else that we do, but we don't always have the time to give it the right amount of attention that it does. So hopefully with the tips that you get here today, you'll be able to spend more time on risk. And if you're looking for ways to improve your risk program, we actually have a guide on that you can look for on our website, or if you send us a message in the comments here, we'll make sure it gets it to you. So number one, with 50% of the votes, is risk activities, and then maturing your control environment, leveling up your reports, and about 6% of you think that you need a few extra coffee breaks, and I'm sure that you actually deserve those. Okay, so very interesting results, and it's time now to move on to our next session. Kayla, take it away.
Thanks, Shimon, and hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kayla Wilson, and I'm an account executive at Anecdotes. I've been selling in the GRC space for almost 4 years now, and during that time, I've seen the market evolve quite a bit. In the conversations I have with practitioners, I learn something new every day. One of the common themes that comes up is confusion. With so many solutions in the market, people don't always know how to tell them apart. So with that in mind, Mike, Jeff, and I thought it would be beneficial and hopefully interesting to try and create some order in chaos. How can GRC teams assess what solutions are right for them? What parameters should you consider when selecting a GRC solution? And how does AI affect all of that? Before we get started, why don't we introduce ourselves? Mike, let's start with you.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, I'm Mike Mello. I am the CISO at the TMX Group. I've led security and risk and compliance programs across highly regulated industries. I've been, hands-on with a number of GRC platforms over the year, both I would say the legacy giants and the new AI native challengers. So definitely here to help kind of cut through some of the noise.
Thank you for that. Over to you, Jeff.
Jeff Hoskins. I'm at Tutela Solutions. I've got 20 years of experience with consulting and GRC tools from fintech, large insurance companies, medical devices, B2B SaaS, all types of products. And what we do at Tutela Solutions is we help companies to pick the tool they want, strategize how they're going to use it, do their implementations for them, and then help them unlock the value out of the tools.
Great. Thank you both. So let's dive in. Here's how we see the market breakdown. There are 3.5 quadrants. You'll understand what we mean by half in just a moment. Mike, can you kick us off by explaining to our audience about traditional workflow automation and your perspective of these types of tools?
Sure. I'd say that, everyone's probably fairly familiar and aware of, the legacy players like the Archers and ServiceNow, Diligence of the world, right? These platforms have been around for a long time, still heavily embedded into kind of the large enterprise environments, right? And, I'd say that the tools are essentially there and designed around like the workflow orchestration component, right? They offer that customization, automation, but, with that kind of flexibility also comes the complexity, right? And if anybody's been on the other side of any of these kind of larger legacy players, I call them, is that you have this major lift for implementation, maintenance, usually requires some sort of like kind of third-party integrator, right? On, how do we actually onboard this into the organization? And if you've been through any of those deployments, they take years, right? And the constant maintenance to kind of tweak is very intense and a lot, of manual overhead involved in there, right? And we're kind of slowly starting to see some of these platforms, I would say, like sprinkle AI onto it. But again, like I think it's very much an additive approach to trying to enhance existing workflows, but it doesn't really, address this fundamental philosophy of how GRC should work, right? With AI kind of out there helping us gather automation around data collection, data insights. So I think that, we're still very focused in this space around, process enablement rather than the data insights itself. So we're not getting deep on data analytics, and, it's pretty unusable out of the box is from what I've seen historically through implementations of these types of technologies. So again, there's some, good customization capability, but it is kind of the 800-pound gorilla in the room, right? It's something that's it's large, it's expensive, from an overhead management day-to-day, and the complexity is a lot, right? And you kind of have to go all into the platform across the entire enterprise to make it something relatively usable.
Thank you so much. And I've seen a lot of that from my experience as well. Jeff, Mike mentioned a little bit about traditional workflow automation solutions approach to AI. How do you think these tools fare in terms of data? And what is the ideal customer for this type of tool?
Well, what I wanted to say about those tools is when you buy them, like Mike said, out of the box, you don't get a whole lot. Well, you get a lot, but it's not reusable. The analogy I use is you've bought permission to go to Lowe's. You can go to Lowe's. There's toilets there. There's 2x4s. There's sheets of lumber. You can do anything you want. You can make a chicken coop. You can make a dog house. You can make a craftsman style house. But you don't have any of those things. You don't have lights. You don't have running water. You don't have processes when you buy the tools. It's up to you to build those processes. You can build running water out of the stuff you get from Lowe's. You can build electricity. You can build a security system that does things for your house. You can build things from what you get from those large tools, but you've got to have those developers. Anytime you change something in your process or there's an upgrade to the tool, you have to have developers and architects that are going to help you take advantage of that. So it's really not doing much. You get to decide what it does with your data. You're telling it everything you need to do with your data. You're putting your data into it. They aren't really helping you with your data. You just got to tell it, map everything, remap everything, and keep up with it.
I completely agree. Those are great analogies. Let's move over to trust management solutions. Jeff, how would you classify these solutions? We'll start with you this time.
These trust management solutions, a lot of people have heard of Vanta, Drata, SecureFrame. They are helping usually small businesses, though they're trying to move up market, and they're doing pretty good. I like some of the things I've seen with that. But what they do is they cover multiple use cases, usually centered around getting you first through getting value from their tools, through getting through your first SOC 2 report or taking over that process for you, getting you ISO certified, making sure you've got HIPAA, some of these major frameworks. And almost always you go in there selecting the frameworks that you want, and then they help you with getting, there's sometimes automated evidence collection, although the customization sometimes is hard to get to. It's more difficult to customize because, like I said in that last analogy, you've bought a certain type of house now. You've bought, you can do the things you want to in your house, but it's hard to make it into something else that it's not.
Thank you. Mike, from your perspective in the enterprise space, how do you view trust management solutions and their ability to solve for complex data challenges?
Yeah, I think they have, some relevance, obviously, as, kind of Jeff is stating, right? I think that they're very turnkey and like fast to deploy. So I think if you're early stages trying to kind of launch a program and get into, let's call it compliance relatively quickly, these tools have their value, right? But I find that you'll hit a ceiling very quickly with these tools, right? Like, because they aren't really scaling with the enterprise, right? As Jeff was alluding to, right? Trying to kind of break it out into more of a holistic compliance, trust solution for the enterprise. I also say that this almost gives you this false sense of maturity too, right? Like you've kind of automated SOC 2 prep, but it doesn't mean like your risk management program is overly robust, right? So I don't think it's overly sufficient enough when you're, trying to assess your audit and risk requirements when they become kind of more complex. So again, great for kind of compliance off of the ground, starting off on your journey. But as you kind of grow and scale in maturity, you're going to notice plateaus and ceilings with a platform like that.
Thank you. Jeff, did you want to add anything about their data before we move on? What kind of data are they collecting?
They're telling you what data they want to collect. They're saying, hey, we want to connect to your HR data because I call it the inventory of people. I like to say inventories. We need to know your inventory of people. And so you integrate that data. We need to know your inventory of assets. So you might connect your endpoints, your workstations, but you might forget that you've also got all these other assets and not connect those, or you might connect your cloud environments. They're wanting, the more of the data they're getting is that integration data, and they've said, align these fields because we want to see these things. I see the AI kind of being used in other use cases in those tools where they're saying, hey, this is the part where you need to design your control to say how you're going to test this. Here's what most companies do to test this. And they kind of give you a good test description of how you might test, or they also help out. Sometimes the auditors can use these platforms and the auditors can say, this is what I did test. This is what I found. And they'll help you write those, that paragraph that says what you did. That's kind of where I see the AI is being placed into various locations. Mike made a comment about the capping out on the maturity. I think that even if you are in the enterprise space tools, that maturity still doesn't come from the tool. It comes from your use cases of the metrics you've decided to put in there. You can still get a very mature company, very mature GRC program out of these tools. You're just going to have to do things on your own that I don't believe even the huge tools do for you. They just give you a place to keep it. So you've still got to get there and do a lot of work on your own. As far as AI with your data, I haven't seen a lot of that.
I have to say that really resonates. I hear a lot of that in the conversation I'm having with practitioners as well. Moving on to the next quadrant, Mike, will you please tell us more about AI native platforms?
I'd say, again, you're kind of, when we look at the whole spectrum of kind of GRC tooling out there, this is like the complete opposite end of where the legacy tooling is, right? Like where you have companies like Anecdotes and Zania and Trastero. I think that the core differentiator, though, when we look at this, is that these AI native tools is that it's again, AI is not an afterthought, right? It's part of the core architecture on how the tool is built and designed, and it's embedded across every layer, right? So whether you're doing evidence gathering or control testing or even reporting, right? So I think that that's kind of the huge separation there, that it's not this kind of layered on approach of AI. And, rather than just kind of speeding up processes, right? It's actually kind of reimagining how are we doing GRC, right? Like, what does that pipeline look like, right? So how are we connecting into different systems or surfacing different types of insights, or kind of adaptive workflows are being enabled? I think that it's really leveling up where GRC teams can really operate, right? If you look at a lot of organizations out of, the outside of the big banking industries, right, our teams are pretty lean, right? We have very lean GRC teams, and this is common. So we need our tools to be able to do more with the less workforce that we have, right? So I would say your user experience with a tool like an Anecdotes or these AI native platforms is more modern, and it's kind of intuitively aligned to how GRC teams work today, right? We're doing a lot of different things with a very small, finite amount of resources. So it helps us become more agile as an organizational practice, right? But there is nuance right there. I think there are a lot of different AI native GRC tools, and so not all are the same, right? Obviously, in my experience with Anecdotes, is that there is a focus on kind of raw data, right, and being able to consume all of the data, right? As Jeff was just saying, some of these tools have been very predictive and prescriptive on what data can they use, whereas you have like a solution like an Anecdotes that's able to consume everything and then create input or analytics based on all of those different data inputs.
That's great. And Jeff, you spend significant time helping your customers to mature their GRC programs. Can you share why the combination of data and AI in the space is so important?
A lot of times in these organizations, you've got someone who didn't set out in their world to become the GRC expert. I've worked with the leader of HR, the leader of legal, the CTO. These people in these organizations have been told, hey, we've discovered we need to do these frameworks. We want to have a GRC. We don't have a security program we can talk about. And these people, they need help in what to measure. They're really good at this other job that they were actually hired to do, and that goes on their title. And then GRC was kind of added to it. So if a tool has a lot of AI insight, it can help them to know the thing to go after next and what to look at, even when it's not what they feel that they've been trained up to do over decades.
I would completely agree. Last but not least, we have our half quadrant, which are single problem solutions. Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Sure. The tools I've put in here are Conveyor, Wistic, Trust Cloud, even Security Scorecard and BitSight. There's others, but these are kind of in the third-party risk space, whether they help you look at your third parties and say, how secure are my third parties? Or they help you to answer questionnaires from your third parties. I like that you're calling it a half quadrant because, these tools only do a few things. But also one thing we're seeing is other tools are buying these. So we've seen Drana had bought SafeBase. I believe recently in the news, we've seen that Vanta has bought, I might say it wrong, but Risky, to kind of help bring on these capabilities to put them into a more full scope of a GRC program. So that's where I see that space today.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Mike, anything to add about this quadrant?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Like these point solutions obviously have a lot of pragmatic purpose around plugging certain gaps, right? But I think there's a lot of trade-off in doing it, right? One, I think TPRM is still a mess and a cluster, and this is kind of where we've seen this emergence of these single point solutions, the very targeted kind of use cases, right? But when you start looking at scaling this out into large enterprise, you you see the trade-offs, right, around fragmentation, around, no single pane of glass. Integrations can kind of get a bit challenging. Is it really truly built and mapped to kind of layer into your risk taxonomy from an enterprise risk management perspective? And I find that it creates silos, right? And then you have this proliferation of like tool sprawl, right? So again, like there's pros and cons to it. I think that what Jeff said is this rapid acquisition of these single point solutions is kind of where it needs to be at, right? Because not every company can just build everything natively. There's a lot of good use cases for organizations to grow based on acquisition. And I think that, we're starting to see that more and more. And I think it's important because there are going to be more, targeted use cases where these early stage companies are going to be able to kind of respond to a lot more quickly rather than kind of the platform solutions. And so I think the important piece and kind of the risk or conscious thing for CISOs is, what does that integration look like with that, acquisition, right? We've seen very limited success in security when it comes to the M&A story, right? You have companies like CrowdStrike who have done it very well, but you have other companies who have yet to prove kind of what that acquisition integration use case looks like. So I think that, we're kind of going into a different era here of these single point solutions being acquired, and we're going to have to kind of see and watch how that eventually molds into these, integrated ecosystems.
I would completely agree with that. I think there's value in best of breed, and there's also value in integrations, but they have to be done right. So with that, we're just about out of time. Let's take one last look at the full GRC vendor landscape and their highlights. If there's anything I've learned in my role, it's that each organization has different needs depending on its size and program complexity. In the context of the summit and data and AI, I think there's some really interesting takeaways about what you should be looking for. So I hope this was helpful for you to better understand what's out there and what is going to help you take your program to the next level. A huge thank you to Jeff and Mike for their takes, and I'm very excited to hand it over to Wright.
Thank you, Kayla. Really interesting perspective and way to look at the market. And honestly, a great segue to what I want to share with you all today. So hi everyone, my name is Roy Amior, and I'm the Chief Product Officer and co-founder at Anecdotes. I'm very excited to share with you our latest additions to our AI native platform. But before that, just a quick word about the approach behind it, the AI native enterprise GRC platform. The way we see it, more than AI has the potential to improve individual GRC processes, it has the potential, for the first time really, to create a truly interconnected program, one where each process is informed and impacts the other. Your controls impact your risks, which impact your policies, and so on. That way, you're truly managing a comprehensive, proactive GRC program. That is what we set out to build and what I want to show to you today. As we saw in the previous session, there are several AI native solutions on the market. What makes Anecdotes unique, though, is that our platform is the only one built on a strong foundation of automatically collected data, which is why we're able to unlock the real potential of AI for GRC, finally reaching the holy grail, real continuous monitoring. In this demo, I want to take you on the journey that gets us there. The first step of the journey to real continuous monitoring is collecting and validating evidence. So let's see how we've transformed these processes for our customers with the help of data and AI. Most of the automated evidence collection at Anecdotes is done through our more than 200 in-house built plugins. These are the most common tools on the market, and for each of them, our team of experts determines what data needs to be collected to satisfy the industry standard controls. However, in some cases, there is additional data that our customers would like to automatically collect from their tools. They could be looking for things like additional configurations, custom reports, and so on. So let's see how GRC managers can now leverage AI to collect all the data they want and save huge amounts of time. And the best part, they don't need the help of engineering or any other technical resources. They can do it
all on their own. Where it comes to tools we already have a plugin with, customers can come into here and using natural language, they can specify what they want to collect. Let's take the example of Jira. We already collect a long list of evidence artifacts from Jira, but some things are unique to each organization. For example, we wouldn't collect evidence of every ticket from every project, right? So here I will specify which project and ticket type I would like to collect a population of. You don't need an API researcher. We'll just write what we're looking for, and as you can see, AI will translate it into the desired endpoint, and I'm basically done. Here, I can easily design the evidence with AI recommending the essential fields to include in the evidence from a compliance perspective. And that saves me the effort of analyzing the JSON file that the API returns. No code or API knowledge required. Once we do this, the evidence will look and behave like any other evidence in Anecdotes. For those of you who are not familiar with our evidence, this is what it looks like. We take the JSON file and turn it into an easy-to-consume format while maintaining the highest level of integrity. In this table, you can easily search, filter, and test the evidence, also using natural language. We'll come back to this a little later. So, I think it's fair to say that we have anything we need to move on to the next stop in our journey towards continuous monitoring. This is evidence testing. To do that, we first need to understand the context we're testing for. So let's set up our controls. Here as well, we give you a few options. You can choose from Anecdotes library of over 50 out-of-the-box frameworks that come all pre-mapped. Once you click Adopt, the control will automatically be populated with your evidence. But what happens if you want to use your own controls? Will you need to manually map hundreds of evidence artifacts to those controls one by one? Of course not. Let me introduce you to our automated onboarding, or AI custom frameworks, a very popular feature among our more mature customers. This allows you to import your existing frameworks and controls into Anecdotes in a matter of minutes. Here, we have a list of controls from an organization. Let's assume this is the org's internal common control framework. They can upload it here. Once it's uploaded, our AI will use the control name, description, or any other fields to suggest the most relevant requirements to connect to this control. While AI can do a lot, we think it's important to keep you in the loop. It is up to you to decide if to accept all the recommendations in bulk or go one by one. For this example, we'll accept them all. These requirements are an additional proprietary layer created by Anecdotes to cross-map evidence across controls more accurately. Instead of assuming false equivalency between similar controls in different frameworks, we created this layer which breaks down controls into specific requirements, and through it, we cross-map evidence to wherever is relevant. You can see here, for example, that this requirement is also cross-mapped to these additional controls in these frameworks. And by the way, these suggestions are available across the platform. In every control you're managing, you can get suggestions for additional requirements that might be relevant, whether you created them or they are pre-built by Anecdotes, allowing you to create a real interconnected program and to mature your controls without additional work. Now that our framework is all built out, let's go into a control. I'll choose a control that exists in virtually every standard framework and is typically very painful to gather evidence for: change management, specifically for code changes. We can start testing its effectiveness and maturity, and that's right, AI is also here to help with that. You also have the ability to accept the suggestions that will give you better visibility into your posture and increase your accuracy of your reporting. Now, it's true. You could probably ask ChatGPT to give you recommendations for improving control maturity. The big difference here is that in Anecdotes, AI runs on your data, your evidence, requirements, policies, risks. It has the right context to give the most accurate recommendations for your specific program. Remember, AI is only as smart as the data it's built on. The AI control assistant is indicating that this control is not mature enough. So what we can do is bring the evidence we created a few minutes ago. Based on the context of the control and framework, AI is now suggesting that we merge the evidence we created with another. Sometimes one dataset doesn't give you everything you need to know. For better monitoring and more insights, you will need to compare information from multiple datasets. With this feature, you can easily merge any two datasets that share a common field. And the best part is, you don't have to invent the wheel all on your own. AI suggests merges that can provide important insights into your program and posture. Here, we are going to merge two evidence artifacts: our population of merged code changes from GitHub, together with a population of corresponding tickets that we collected from Jira earlier. Our common field in this case is the pull request ID. The merged evidence operates like any other evidence in Anecdotes. And here as well, you have monitoring and testing capabilities that are enhanced by AI. Using natural language, you can search for anything in the evidence and easily scope it, making it easier to validate your evidence and find gaps you need to remediate. You can see that you get insights on the evidence level as well. The AI provides you with security and compliance insights about your data based on best practices and advanced research, allowing you to become proactive and more security focused. Here, for instance, the AI insights identify that some pull requests created by the same engineer lack a corresponding Jira ticket. It raises a potential risk and offers you to create a task to remediate. For our new merged evidence artifact, there are several tests that we will want to perform. An initial test would be to ensure that every single pull request performed in GitHub has a corresponding ticket within Jira. With the help of AI, it's easier than ever to set this rule using natural language. Just like this, saving a lot of time, avoiding mistakes, and making rule setting accessible to any user. Since this is a crucial part of your monitoring, here as well, we want to keep you in the loop. So AI will do the work for you, but you can simulate the test and modify it before you choose to apply it. We've also created a way to overcome one of the biggest pain points for teams, having to analyze manual evidence. For this control, for example, we've uploaded a snippet of the actual code from within GitHub. With our AI evidence reader, users get a name suggestion and summary of the manual evidence, allowing them to validate it much faster and better. And with proper naming and a summary, it is finally possible to find what you're looking for. And of course, you guessed it, this search can also be done with the help of simple natural language query. So, now we've ensured that our controls are populated with a constant flow of validated data evidence. We also know that if any gaps should arise, we will get automated notifications right away. So, we are finally ready for any GRC use case, really. For today's journey, let's continue by maturing our control environment even further. As we mentioned before, one of the biggest things that AI can help you with is creating an interconnected program. Here, you already see the AI recommendations for connecting this control to risk, and we'll come back to that in a few minutes. But as you can see, they can also be connected to policy statements. Let's take a look at how this works. Our AI Policy Guardian scans your policies for actionable statements, statements that require that action be taken or controls be implemented, and maps them to the relevant controls and evidence in your program. This policy is the change management policy. These are the same statements we saw from the control perspective before. As I said, everything is connected. What makes Anecdotes AI unique is its focus and deep GRC understanding. Our AI model is trained on hundreds of datasets and monitoring rules from the Anecdotes knowledge base, which results with a model that can accurately identify statements that reflect security practices and require continuous monitoring. As you can see, thanks to the context of your program, the Policy Guardian not only identifies the statements for you, it lets you know if they match the monitoring rules you have set in your program. This capability gives you a whole new level of visibility into your policy implementation. You can actually know if your policies are being followed, vastly increasing your control maturity. This can only be achieved thanks to the combination of AI and a strong foundation of data. With mature controls and monitored policies, it's now time to move on to the next step on our GRC journey: risk. So, how can risk be improved with data and AI? Well, there are a few ways. If you have decided to mitigate the risk, you will get suggestions for mitigating controls to link to this risk. And just like that, your risk register comes alive, and you have a real connection between your risk register and what is actually happening in your organization operations. Thanks to Anecdotes' automated risk calculation, the mitigating controls you link to a risk will have an automated impact on the residual risk level, giving you a true picture of your risk posture. Within each risk, our AI will also suggest a treatment plan based on the context of your program: risk description, source, risk assessment, your mitigating control statuses, custom fields you've added, anything, as well as best practices. In addition, once again highlighting the importance of AI with data, you will get suggestions for supporting documentation from your evidence pool. Just imagine the value your risk owners will get from having a real understanding of your current posture. So far on this journey, we have done a lot of work to mature our program. We have trusted data that is being continuously monitored, mature controls, and a living and breathing risk program. It is now time to leverage all of that hard work to build trust with customers and partners. In addition to our Trust Center that already allows you to easily share your documentation and posture with external partners, I am very excited to announce the launch of Anecdotes MCP Server, which will allow customers to leverage all of their data and work in Anecdotes for any business purpose. This will allow you to complete your AI transformation, both in the platform and outside it. Well, that brings us to the end of our GRC journey today, but not to the end of Anecdotes data and AI capabilities. We have a lot more features already in production and on the roadmap, and I'm very excited about what's coming. If anyone has any questions about what we just saw, please share them in the chat, and we will make sure to get you an answer. But in the meantime, Shimon, let me send it back to you.
Thank you, Roy. So many exciting features and still so many great ones on the roadmap coming soon. But now we want to hear what's on your roadmap, and it's time for our second poll. We got a couple of questions about voting for the poll, so here's a quick reminder of how these work. This isn't a regular Zoom poll. What you need to do is open up the chat, and in the chat, write the number of the answer that you want to vote for and send. That's it. It will then be calculated into what we see on the screen. So here's our question. How soon will you be incorporating new data and AI capabilities into your program? Will it be in the next 6 months, in the next year, or do you think it'll take more than a year? Again, to vote, either send in the chat 1, 2, or 3. It looks right now that there is a lot of urgency when it comes to implementing new AI and data capabilities, with 58% of the vote going to the next 6 months, another quarter at 6 to 12 months, and only about 18% at 12 months. I'll give you a couple more seconds to vote to make sure that you get the chance. Again, put that number in the chat and just click send, and you'll see the numbers here shifting. But still definitely a clear winner with doing it in the next 6 months. And that is great because our next session is perfect to help you find those specific ways where AI can help you already. You're going to get some practical tips from this excellent panel. So without further ado, Ethan, over to you.
Thank you, Shimon, and welcome Vineet, Ruchi, and Abhijit. Thank you for joining us for this panel. Let's do a very quick round of introductions. Ruchi, let's start with you.
Hey everyone, I'm Ruchi. I lead the GRC product management at Google and looking forward for the session.
Awesome. And Vineet?
Hi everybody, Vineet Seth here. I'm the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Coalfire, so lead our platform and tech automation strategy.
Perfect. And Abhijit?
Hi everyone. I'm Abhijit Verma. I lead the global tech consulting practice at Unicus. Glad to be here.
Perfect. Thank you for that. All right, let's lay it all on the table. GRC was going through a big transformation long before AI became all the rage. Whatever you think the trigger was, whether it was GRC platforms, evolving threat landscapes, even just the passage of time, there is no denying that the job description of the standard GRC practitioner looks very different today to what it probably looked like 5 years ago, and to be honest, to what it probably looked like 1 year ago. We are seeing an increasing emphasis on technical skill sets, on being familiar with modern tech stacks that have probably replaced policy and procedure-centric skill sets and traditional second line of defense activities. I'd say the last year has really put that change on steroids. If I was writing a job description to hire a GRC professional tomorrow, I don't know what I'd write. One thing I would definitely prioritize is a willingness to dive headfirst into AI tools. A lack of willingness to adopt and interact with AI would be an instant no-go. That being said, not every GRC practice or process is really right for AI, and it's really important to know that whoever is using it is doing so carefully. So, I suppose the first question I'm really putting out there is where and how can you incorporate AI into GRC starting today? And where can we really trust it to be a force multiplier? So, Ruchi, I'll start with you. I know there are many use cases, but if you had to recommend to a GRC team to implement and incorporate AI in one place, where would you start?
So if I have to give like a very quick 2 use cases which are tried and tested by me is how we can take a particular regulation and start decomposing that hundreds and thousands of PDFs pages into very simple technical concept and control map it to your internal control catalog, unified control framework, whatever a company uses. That's like a very concrete use case where AI is helping tons to gain efficiency, reduce toil, and accelerate the processes. So we have been experimenting with this a lot, and we are also developing something for our customers to play with. So this is something I think definitely gonna hopefully help people. The last piece of the puzzle is, okay, now I have all the auditing data because this is about data and AI, how I can use that entire data and write a SOC 2 report. That will reduce a toil from 6 months to maybe 6 weeks and 6 days because now I have the data in one place. It's now just training a model on like a SOC 2 or PCI or whatnot type of a report format and auto-generate maybe start of a report, which auditors can append and add their validations and things like that. So the start of the journey and the beginning of the journey, I can say, can be safely adopted with human in the middle. And those were my 2 recommendations.
Before your last sentence, I was about to ask Vineet, hey, so it looks like we don't need auditors anymore. Vineet, what's your opinion? But yeah, I very much agree on the human in the loop point. Vineet, over to you. What are your thoughts? Where would you leverage AI?
So great, great lead in from Ruchi here, right? so Ethan, yeah, I mean, look, I mean, as you said, our mission at Coalfire obviously is around, helping our customers, go through their toughest compliance challenges, right? And my mission is, as part of that is to simplify that journey for our customers through automation, right? That's what I'm focused on. AI is, as you said, you can't really look at a current GRC professional and say that, you're not conversant with AI, or it's okay to be a little uncomfortable, but then you have to really dive headfirst. So, what do GRC professionals or our customers really care about? I mean, the kind of thing that they go through, like Ruchi was saying, the journey they go through. I I mean, at the end of the day, they are there to help their business grow, right? And adapt to new regulations, adapt to new markets, which means more work for them understanding new regulations and having programs around those new regulations very quickly, and then collecting all those artifacts related to those regulations and working with their business teams around ensuring they're following those regulations. So I would say the one thing I would pick is, I feel for our, GRC professionals, right, who go through what is called audit fatigue, right? I mean, that's probably the biggest thing I would focus on is how do you help manage audit fatigue for them? And audit fatigue, a lot of it is around evidence collection for these frameworks and regulations. So I would focus on the evidence collection piece, and that's what we're focused on as well, right? Is really looking at, large pieces of documentation, especially with Gen AI. That's like, really the biggest bang for the buck in some ways, the low-hanging fruit. Taking a look at things like policy and procedure documentation, being able to map it not just to one regulation, but multiple regulations simultaneously, looking at the fidelity of the controls and saying, look, is this evidence, is this document actually meeting the criteria and the spirit behind the control or not? So that kind of detailed analysis, and to be able to extract the context from those documents, page numbers, section numbers, I mean, AI is perfect for that. In fact, that's where we are in our automation journey for our customers as well. So that's what I focus.
I think that's super interesting because I think, Ruchi, you started with the translation of the regulation and standard. Vineet, you went down the route of policy and procedure and taking text and translating that into, does this meet what the regulation and standard requires me to do? And I think that the missing part of the puzzle may actually be in data and analyzing the actual process that the organization has put in place. Is it actually occurring as is claimed in their policy and procedure? Okay, Abhijit, over to you. What are your thoughts?
Ethan, I don't know whether you planned this out, but I think if I were to string the previous two conversations and suggestions and sort of add to this, 25 years of being an auditor and a consultant in GRC, I think I'd call out two use cases. The first one I would call escaping the evidence of the screenshot jungle, right? How do you escape the screenshot jungle? And this is where I think Anecdote does such a fabulous job of, if I can triangulate some semblance of a UFC or Unified Control Framework with where it is deployed across all the assets within the organization, and what are the evidences? And if I can use AI to really simplify this, right? This solves so much of the mayhem, not just in operations, but also in the collective minds of all the GRC teams, to say, hey, we are simplifying this, we are streamlining this, we are increasing the quality of the environment. That would be the first sort of use case, right? How does sort of Anecdotes really orchestrate that? And this is in your wheelhouse. I think the second one would be what some of us in the GRC domain have been, this has been our North Star, right? Of saying, hey, can we build self-healing environments? Like we used to do, brainstorming discussions at Goldman, and this was like, hey, how can I build self-healing controls and control frameworks? And the ability to do auto suggestions. Once your data foundation is laid, right? Your ability to do auto suggestions effectively on, hey, here are duplicates. Hey, here are, interlinkages that I cannot discover. Hey, here is, sort of potentially ability to remodel a control. And putting human in the loop, we perhaps have an opportunity to actually get to that North Star of saying, hey, let's build an auto-healing sort of a control environment, which has been our North Star. Yeah, those would be my 2 points.
Okay, love it. We are pretty short on time, so I'll ask for the next question to give us almost like a one-liner on what your thoughts are. We've understood now that you have this regulation or standard, you interpret it using AI, you link it to your policies and procedures, and you evaluate whether your policies and procedures meet those regulations and standards. Validate that by leveraging the actual data that underlies that process that you're putting in place. Maybe you even go as far as when you recognize deficiency, you auto-heal. I really like that. Let's say I did all of this. What safeguards can we put in place to actually be able to trust this process? I think we're all very risk averse by virtue of our professions. So Abhijit, let's start with you this time. We'll go the other way around. What safeguards would you put in place?
We also need to be, Ethan, here pragmatic about this, right? This is not a mission critical, say the environment is not necessarily mission critical. Let's be real about this. This is not our payment gateway. This is not, 999 availability expectation. And therefore, I think the risk is more integrity of information that the GRC systems or the entire environment sort of holds. And in that sense, I think embedding AI needs to be a calibrated process of saying, hey, it's an auto suggestion first, and then there's human in the loop. Oh, here is a draft of a SOC report, and it is 70% ready, and over time it will be perhaps 80% ready and 90% ready, and eventually get to a stage where you're getting comfortable and iterative. So I would say human in the loop, iterative process. It could be, perhaps the best way to sort of embed both confidence and manage the risk.
Agreed. Vineet, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think totally agree with what's been said, right? I mean, the number one thing here is you have to have human in the loop, right? I mean, you can't really, rely on AI to make all the decisions, including the most critical decisions and recommendations. Say, hey, I recommended this, and by the way, I'll verify it and say everything's fine, right? You can't let AI do that. That's why human in the loop is very important, and making sure, the output you're getting. It's almost like, you have to do A/B testing, right? And make sure, that what the model is producing is accurate, it's traceable. You can actually understand how the AI model gives you a recommendation or a reason. I mean, that's pretty important. So this is why, the transparency piece, linking that human in the loop to also transparency and governance. You need to have a structure where you actually have safeguards in place around governance as well, and making sure, there is reviews happening, there's policies for, your use, your customer use. And I think the last thing I would say is, the regulations are in some ways just catching up. I mean, the AI innovation is happening so fast, it's almost hard to keep up, right? For any kind of technology, and especially, security and governance is, I think, still catching up with what's happening in AI innovation. So, frameworks like ISO, 42001 or the EU AI Act or the NIST RMF, I mean, those are great, models to look at as to how you go about, your journey around AI adoption as well.
Ruchi?
Yeah, I can share two perspectives. One perspective is me who loves building AI GRC products at the intersection of both. And I developed like a conversational AI bot to not generate, but just really train the model on the existing piece of evidences and type a prompt, hey, give me all the evidences for encryption. And this experiment was run like 2 years back. I haven't played with it since 2 years. And I'm sure in last 2 years or 1.5 years, the technology has evolved. The models have become sophisticated. I know even Gemini has become more sophisticated. So it's okay, as the technology itself is becoming sophisticated, can we train them better? And of course, as Vineet said, having human in the middle who can validate the output is super important. So I wouldn't trust it 100% of it, right? To your question, where are the pitfalls? So that is a perspective of when I'm building tools, and is it ready to give it to consumers? Maybe not, because it's still in the experimentation mode. But having said that, if I wear the hat of a big cloud provider who is also developing all the base models, and customers are deploying their workloads on these models and using the services and building the products and apps and whatnot, The guardrails that can be put around AI is more around, do we have the right AI specific controls, right? Right now, we have so many AI frameworks in the market, as we used to have traditional like PCI, NIST, ISO SOX. Can we look at some baseline controls, like accesses are right? Are the models trained perfectly or not? Do we have right DLP? Like things like basic 10 things. Can we do that around our AI applications to make sure we get that extra confidence and get that extra security that this particular application is operating effectively?
All right, we're at time. Thank you all so much. So there you have it. We have heard a lot of directions in which we can go with AI when it comes to GRC, but the bottom line seems consistent. Having a human in the loop is critical. So GRC practitioners, rest assured, seems that your jobs are safe for the time being.
That's definitely a relief. But jokes aside, we just heard some great use cases for where you can apply AI into your program today. Now we want to hear from you what other AI capabilities you would want to see in a GRC platform. Would you want a mitigation agent that creates tasks and findings and so on? Would you want your very own AI assistant with GRC expertise that's familiar with your program data? An agent employees can ask questions about your security policies, or a way for customers to use natural language queries to search your trust center. If none of these options are what you're looking for and you want to share something in the Q&A or in the chat, definitely feel free to do that as well. But let's take a look at what's going on here. And it seems that right now we have a clear winner with an assistant that knows all of my GRC context and has all my program data that can give additional help. It's almost like having someone else on the team giving you all that information, but being able to analyze it at a high level. So that's absolutely our clear winner, with a very far second with a mitigation agent, which I'm sure would also save people a lot of time. But it seems that having an AI assistant that knows the context of your program, has all that data, and can give you answers for it is definitely the winner here for us. It's now time for our keynote session. And I'll see you right after that to announce the winners of our Xbox giveaway. Yair?
Thank you, Shimon. I'm very excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Brian Fields. Brian is a KPMG partner with experience across a range of industries. He leads KPMG's audit transformation team, a cross-disciplinary group responsible for driving KPMG's strategy to improve the quality, efficiency, and experience of the audit, reimagining assurance for a digital and interconnected world, which makes him the perfect speaker for our topic today: GRC assurance in the age of AI, what auditors expect in the AI era, and what you can do about it. Brian, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yair, I'm so excited to be here with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Great. I think before we dive into our topic, I have to ask, you've been leading innovation and transformation for years. Do you see similar patterns of change when comparing the cloud transformation to the AI transformation? Or is there something unique about the AI transformation?
Wow, well, that's a big question, Yair, and I'll give you my best shot at it. I mean, look, I certainly do not want to diminish the importance of cloud. Cloud has been massively transformative in so many ways. I do think clearly the AI revolution and cloud go hand in hand. You couldn't have the AI revolution without cloud. I think if I stand back and think about it from a GRC and an audit perspective, clearly there are some similarities in terms of the new risks that AI raises may mirror some of the risks that cloud raised in terms of data security and reliance on vendors and some of those elements. But I do think fundamentally the AI revolution has the capacity to be much more transformative to across the organization than cloud. Again, as a complementary and additive element to that cloud infrastructure. And fundamentally, Yair, I think it's because these are new kinds of machines. AI is fundamentally a capability that replicates in ways we just haven't seen before intelligence and human intelligence. And we're in the early innings of that, but that has the capacity to change, everything that we do at an organization and really transform business models in ways that likely go far beyond cloud by itself.
I absolutely agree. I think KPMG has made some fascinating and promising bets on AI. What problems are you trying to solve with AI?
Oh my gosh. Well, as you know, KPMG is a large organization and has advisory elements, tax elements, and audit elements. And certainly we're looking at the impact of AI across the organization. But since this is a GRC conference and I'm an auditor by background, I'll focus there. And, it's interesting. As I think about the transformation of the audit, the area I focus most significantly on, I think AI has the ability to supercharge every element of what I'm looking at. And really, what I'm looking at is the audit as a data exercise. How do we most efficiently uh, obtain the data we need to then apply the algorithms we need to apply to obtain the inferences that give us comfort that we've achieved the objectives we want to achieve. And certainly a very similar model could be applied to other objectives beyond audit and GRC objectives. But I very much think about the transformation as how can we do that better, faster, stronger. And I think AI is going to help us both on the data area, which of course we're working with you on. It's going to help us in standardizing that data and getting it to the places we need to get it to in order to perform the algorithms and get to the inferences. It's going to help us in documenting. It's going to help us in so many areas across the audit. And so I'm really just thrilled at the partnership we've had with Anecdotes to accelerate that. Audit is going to be so important in this NGRC, in this environment we're heading into, because AI also provides the capacity to create all sorts of fake things that look real. And so I'm excited both about the opportunity for assurance and GRC, but also obviously the transformations that AI is going to bring to the underlying business models.
I actually want to dive into the assurance in the age of AI, which is a whole different, I'd say, perspective on AI. So AI depends entirely on the data that's feeding it. And from your perspective, what does audit-ready data looks like in the age of AI? What should practitioners prioritize to ensure that the AI systems they're using produce credible outputs that auditors can trust?
This is one of the biggest questions out there, as you know, Yair, because I think that, as we talk about the hype versus what's real, there are significant limitations of these capabilities. And in a way, you're getting the ability to scale of a machine, but you're getting to one degree or another the fallibility and the black box elements of a human reasoning. And so inventing those safeguards, inventing those controls and the frameworks for delivering GRC against AI systems, I think is one of the most important things this profession is called upon to do over these coming years. Certainly from a data perspective, and this is tried but true, the provenance of that data, the traceability of that data, the lineage of that data, all of those programmatic elements to get better confidence about where data is coming from, where data is going through, and the controls around those. I do think the importance of that is only going to rise as we move into the future. And then certainly the persuasiveness of those AI capabilities and evaluating their persuasiveness is going to be one of the huge unlocks. So really fascinating area, and we can double click on any area of that, Yair. But I think that the opportunities for us are just incredible in this area around the levels of assurance society is going to need as these machines, really become pervasive.
Yeah, and you mentioned black boxes in the world of AI, which is something we are all aware of in LLMs. How should organizations handle AI tools with models and algorithms that are, by definition, black box systems?
Yeah, this is the fundamental thing, like I said, because I think historically we've had two kinds of controls, right? We've had human operating controls, which we've developed over thousands of years, right? Frankly, ways of managing humans and supervising humans and deciding whether a human is credible or not. So we've got those human controls that don't scale very well, but we do have ways we've gotten comfortable with human outputs. And then we've historically had deterministic machine controls that we have a very good playbook for evaluating, because once you audit them and you see that the configurations are right and the security is right, they work consistently every time. Now you've got this third category, a third category that has the fallibility of the human, meaning it can make judgment errors and whatnot, but the scalability of the machine. And so how do we crack that? And I do think that where we're heading is likely into a world that has a real strong flavor of model governance, I'll call it, Yair, where if you think about, I used to audit banks. One of the things we do when we audit banks is look at their loan loss provisioning models, which are very, very complex and include all sorts of assumptions and inputs. I think that we're going to be in a parallel position with AI, where there's going to be important work that we need to do before we deploy AI agents and the like, to make sure that their explainability is there, to make sure that their error rates are at an acceptable degree, because I don't think they're going to be at zero. And then ongoing model governance to monitor, likely in real time and continually, how many standard deviations are we moving off of those those calibrations that we inserted at the beginning. So I do think it's a whole new world in terms of how do you wrangle and supervise a team of agents that may be thousands or millions of agents. It's daunting. It's exciting. It's a whole new game.
We got a lot of people in the audience. There are GRC practitioners leading GRC programs, leading GRC functions. And how do you see data and AI changing the operation from the practitioner's seat? What should they be doing differently moving forward, given the change in expectations from the audit side?
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm taking this in the direction you were thinking, but one of the things I think about a lot is our professionals at KPMG, our auditors, and how they're going to adapt to this world. And I think the workforce implications are both exciting, like huge opportunity, and daunting. I'll just speak for KPMG's audit practice that I'm a part of. We've historically recruited a very specific type of skill set. We've recruited CPA eligible individuals, of course, technology assurance individuals as well, who have demonstrated a particular subject matter expertise. I do think at KPMG, more and more we're looking at, okay, the body of knowledge that you were expected to know coming in might change very rapidly over the next couple of years. And so more and more we're looking for people that not only have a certain body of knowledge, can demonstrate a certain amount of technical skill, but also demonstrate attributes consistent with creativity, consistent with adaptability, consistent with I'll call it grit or determination to work through things, because we do think that this next era is going to be so disruptive that we're going to need a type of mindset in the auditor that is able to adapt very quickly and take multiple capabilities, not just AI, and pull them together in a way that delivers against an objective. So not sure if that's where you were going, Yair, but that is very top of mind for me in terms of how do we construct the right workforce? And as I think about GRC professionals, I do think some of that, a lot of that holds true in terms of there's just going to be so many different kinds of capabilities coming online. How do we really bring problem solving against that to evolve our models?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually related exactly to my question, because I think we are seeing the balance between the change in the workforce on the audit side, but also the change in the workforce in the GRC managers on the other side. And moving towards engineering data-driven, AI-adopted methodologies requires, as you said, a slightly different or a whole different stack of capabilities. So it's, I think, really important sharing here. We are seeing this motion on both sides. It's not just one side of the equation, it's audit and also the practitioners that work on behalf of the enterprises. What is one thing our audience should do to prepare for these changes, Ryan?
Oh gosh, I ask myself that question every day. I do think being curious, interacting with these capabilities. It's funny. I'll share just a story from the last couple of days. I broke my wrist a week ago in a embarrassing little gym accident. And I got so many get well cards from my team. And what was funny to me is, I mean, really touching to me is they all used AI to create, the little comics and the little pictures to say "get well." I forget what it said. It said something like "rest assured, you'll be back on your feet soon," and it had a little cartoon character. But it just shows me that all this creativity of really interacting with these capabilities. Ethan Mollick often talks about the jagged frontier of AI, and it's so true that these capabilities, in some ways, are extremely smart, in other ways are very dumb. You can find things that they can't do well. I think that they used to say, "Oh, AI can't count how many R's are in strawberry." They've probably fixed that at this point, but I think that felt sense of what can the models do, what can't the models do, is something that I find very beneficial in my work. So just staying close to the action, being creative, taking opportunities to solve problems in new ways. One thing I'll mention, Yair, that we've been talking a lot about at KPMG, a company that's been extremely successful lately is Palantir. And they, as you know, blend a software model with a professional services model by deploying what they call a forward deployed engineer into the marketplace that can quickly bring data capabilities together and provide meaningful analytical value. We've been talking a lot about the forward deployed auditor. Like, what would that look like? Someone that can drop into a situation. I think this could be true for governance professionals as well. Drop into a situation and quickly pull all the data elements and produce value. So I think that problem solving mindset and that experimentation mindset is something we can all bring to this next period of time.
Okay, so I have to ask a question now, and that's a big one. We have no idea how to forecast the future, but we have to try. In a year from now and 5 years from now, how do you see our world changing in the domain of GRC and audit?
Yeah, no, my crystal ball is cloudy for sure, Yair, but I think I have a sense of the direction of travel, if not the the speed. I started, I have to confess how old I am. I started in the dot-com boom in San Francisco at Arthur Andersen, so a long, long time ago. And the things I did as an auditor, an external auditor, back then, like sending faxes of confirmations, and I had my red pencil, like looks nothing like the way we do audits today. We do audits, completely different today, but the velocity has been moving so fast. And so what I would see in terms of the audit landscape over the next couple of years, more and more, I think we're going to invent ways to seamlessly collect information, whatever information we need to collect on controls and process documentation and whatnot, seamlessly collect it. And that could include both process and controls documentation, but also in an external audit, underlying general ledger and subledger data. Collect that data as seamlessly as possible, often in a cloud to cloud type of environment, and then more and more build algorithms, often very much supported by AI, to take that data, do the first draft of what needs to be processed with that information, do the first round in terms of checks, do the first round in terms of the documentation, and then we're going to have to think very carefully about where to insert the humans in that loop. That's one of the things I spend a lot of my time on, Yair, is thinking about, we can't have a human look at every step. At one point, people said, well, now we can see all the chain of thought from these AI models. Let's have a human read all that. Well, there's going to be millions of pages of chain of thought if we go down that path. And so figuring out where the human is going to make a positive difference And so I do think the human isn't going away, though. I think even as we build towards that turbocharged audit model, the human's going to become that much more important as someone that can synthesize what's coming out of that, communicate with other stakeholders throughout the organization. And so I do think there's almost a supercharged auditor at the end of this supercharged audit as well. So hopefully that helps a little bit in terms of where the picture might look. And I wake up every day thinking, how can we build this machine, this audit machine, to deliver in that better way?
That's phenomenal. Brian, it was amazing talking to you today. Thank you very much for joining us, spending the time. And I have some great takeaways I took from this session. I'm sure the audience as well. Thank you again, Brian.
Well, thank you. And thanks to your audience. I mean, this is just such an exciting time in this GRC world. So much great stuff ahead. Thanks again, Yair.
All right, now we're back to Shimon for last few surprises for this year's summit.
Wow, really fascinating conversation. Thank you, Yair, and thank you, Brian, for that. That brings us to the end of our summit today. But before we do that, we have one more order of business for you, announcing our Xbox giveaway winners. The winners are Randall H., Hannah D., Cole K., Nandini P. and Daniel K. Congratulations to the winners, and we'll be in touch with you to arrange everything after the summit. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to us or to visit Anecdotes.ai. And if there's something you missed or you want to revisit, don't worry, we'll be sharing the recording with you right after this. We also hope to see you later at one of our in-person happy hours in 8 different cities. You can find more details about that on our website or on our LinkedIn page. Finally, I want to say one more thank you to our incredible sponsors. Thank you again to our speakers and of course to all of you for joining. We'll see you next year. Have a great rest of your day.